Hi again. Thanks for coming to the 2011 World Conference for Noahide Nations. We will kick off with the next speaker. And when I tell you this next person needs no introduction, it's because I'm doing it. So, thanks. I'll take that applause as approval. I'm Jim Long, in case you haven't met me. My wife Carol is here with me. We represent Lightcatcher Productions, Lightcatcher Books. A lot of you folks we're already dear friends and neighbors, and we've known each other quite a while. We've got some new faces here, so I hope that you won't leave the conference disappointed, and more so disappointed with yours truly. Carol and I chose the conference as our official release for our new book, and it's my new book. It's called Blood Brother: The History of Israel's Enemy. And people ask me, they say, Jim, what's your new book about? And I say, well, it's about a wrestling match. It's about an epic wrestling match that began centuries ago. It's a wrestling match that began in Gan Eden, the Garden of Eden. It's a wrestling match that happened again in the land of Canaan. It's a wrestling match we still see today in the world. It's something that we have wrestled with throughout our lives. And I think it's very appropriate because what I came to believe as I was writing the book, and the book was an amazing experience. It's about 5, 6, 7 years overdue. And again, it's my second book, and it wouldn't have happened if it hadn't been for Carol gently urging me to, please, Jim, write this book. And she always prompts me with these beautiful covers that she designs. And this, of course, is what we're calling a pre-release copy because, honestly, to get it ready for the conference, we knew it would have some typos in it. And so that's my present to you folks that buy the early copy, is to enjoy the typos. By the way, it's cheaper than the official release will be. So, but you know, why write this book? One of the things I learned in writing it was that humanity cannot survive without Israel. And when I say that, I mean Am Yisrael, the nation of Israel. We have some of the folks from that nation sitting here in the room with us this afternoon. It is not a religion, it is a nation. God never told Avraham Avinu, I will make of you a great religion. He said, I will make of you a great people, a great nation. And he told those assembled at Har Sinai, at Mount Sinai, he said, I will make you a kingdom of priests. These people are priests. And those in this room that have come to this conference this weekend, we have recognized that fact. We look to them to shed the light of Torah upon us. And in all that I have learned about Torah, I have taken from my priesthood. The priesthood in the form of Rabbi Avraham Sutton, other great rabbis that are here, an amazing lineup of rabbis that are at this conference this weekend. Also the form of the great Chazal, the sages, and their wonderful commentaries. I see you guys shaking your heads because you have also learned from those rabbis too. One particular rabbi that I discovered that I had not known, and you may have already discovered the joys of this commentary, is Rabbi Hirsch. Rabbi Samson Raphael Hirsch, who is an amazing Torah giant. I recommend his entire Chumash. It will enlighten and it will innervate you. And you'll sit back and you'll have a lot of those moments where you kick back in the chair and go, wow, did I just read that? And so in reading through his Torah and other Torah parshas and other commentaries, I look to these giants for ways to help me tell you the story of this epic struggle that has gone down through the ages. And there were certain Torah precepts, certain teaching precepts that helped me and enlarge my understanding of the Torah in a way that I'd never understood it before when I was writing this book. You will also be familiar with these concepts. Midah keneged midah. Excuse my Texas-tinged Hebrew. No, it's not Arkansas tinged, it's Texas tinged, okay? Of course, it's measure for measure. If you remember measure for measure as you're studying your Torah, it will open up portals of This is a way, of course, that, we look at it in terms of punishment. The punishment fits the crime. No, our God does not do that. Our God corrects us. David talks about how he looked forward to your rod of correction. Whatever it is, he would look forward to it because we are his children, and he does correct us, and we love it if he does. It may be a little hard sometimes, but he designed the world as a place where we would learn from errors and elevate our souls. In other words, the Creator gave us free will. I'm reading from my book right now, if you excuse me. The Creator designed the world as a place where we could learn from the errors and elevate our souls. In other words, if we allow consequences to ensue with free will, we overcome them, we mature emotionally and spiritually in the process. Adam and Eve learned this in Gan Eden. And again, this is an amazing thing. If you invoke measure for measure, you'll see that Adam and Eve violated God's command by doing what? By eating the so-called forbidden fruit. Instead of their idyllic existence in Gan Eden, they experienced genuine hunger, and they were forced to labor to fill their stomachs as well as their souls. They had to, because they ate, and that was their error. God says you will eat to correct the error. Cunning words beguiled Adam and Eve, led them away from the path of an everlasting paradise. Speech, the very instrument that separates us from the animal realm, is also the mechanism that if we let it, it will lead us away from God. And because the Nachash used speech, he also was, of course, to suffer, and he had to eat the dust of the earth. So after this experience of being expelled from Gan Eden, we have the first two brothers that we read of in history in the Torah, Cain and Abel. It was amazing because in a way, Eve, our mother, it almost seems like that she didn't learn her lesson, but maybe she did, but we can't tell at this point, because she named this firstborn twin. They were twins, by the way. She named this firstborn Cain. I have acquired a man from God. So, as we know, again, something you want to remember when you learn your Torah is that every name of every figure in the Torah is a prophecy. It distills the essence of that person, and it's a prophetic ID of their life. Cain, where we got the word gain from, was all about acquisition. That's all he was interested in. So when it came time for him to bring an offering, a korban, he was the one that was to bring the first one. And by the way, if you really study your Torah, you find out Cain didn't bring the first offering. His brother Hevel brought it, because Hevel knew how Cain regarded the korban, the offering. The korban, by the way, the korban is, and I go to length in my book because one of my pet peeves, and it's probably the pet peeve of everyone in this room, is the way that those who don't know Torah and don't understand Torah, they look at the idea of the korbanot, the offerings that will be restored in the new temple, are this savage ritual where we kill animals and we put them on a fire. Well, this is the 4th of July weekend. People are taking dead animals and they're putting them on the fire. What's the difference? There is a big difference. One of them is a very holy act, and the other is just all about consuming. And whether we like it or not, a lot of us no-hides in the room, we have grown up in a Western world where we've been taught to consume because we were taught by the ultimate consumer. Okay? And he belittled the idea of the korban. God said, bring something precious from your stores. And, Cain looked at the inventory and went, you know what, I got a lot of flax I can get rid of. I think I'll burn that up. And so, of course, his sacrifice was not accepted. And it had nothing to do with what he sacrificed, not a bit. God didn't reject the sacrifice because it was flax. He would have not rejected it if it had been precious to Cain. Because what we learn from this amazing act of offerings is that like everything in the Torah, it has a multifaceted, because the Torah is like the sapphire given to Moshe Rabbeinu on Mount Sinai. You turn it every which way. If you look at the same verse, you'll see it many different ways, and it means many different things, and they're all applicable at whatever time you need them to be applied in your life. And so, when we look at the teaching of the Korban, it's a model for how the universe works. It's the way the world is sustained. The ground, the Adumah, holds these precious minerals. And what does the ground do? The ground gives up those minerals. It sacrifices, if you will. It offers them up to the grasses. And the grasses give up their essence to the animal life. Each of these are consumed completely and destroyed completely, and then mankind comes along, and we take that offering from the grasses, and after the flood, we take it from the animal world. Now, we're supposed to take our lives, and we're supposed to, are we supposed to die now? Whoa, all these other things in the cycle didn't they? No. And this is what we learned from the Akedah, the offering of Isaac. We learn that later. That because God has elevated us above the animal realm, and wants us to remember that, is that when we take in that life-giving essence from the animal and the plant world, we also take ourselves and we use that life-giving energy, and we offer ourselves in service to God and to man. And we do something no other part of the entire creation can do. We actually take it and elevate it, and we make it holy. The Jew more so than the non-Jew, because he is a member of the nation of Israel. But then again, as you well know, Noahides can also bring an offering. But as a Jew of the nation of Israel, a person of the nation of Israel, their whole life is in service to God and to man. Cain did not understand that. And so as we go down through the centuries, and I'm going to skip through my book, we're going to go to the time of Avraham Avinu, Abraham, the father of Isaac. We see that in the time of the offering of what we call the Akedah, which was a great mystery to me, we see that in this great act, we see the other aspect of Korban or Korbanot. And that is that once and for all, God says, I want you to know that you're not supposed to die after taking part in this holy cycle that I put together to sustain the universe. And I'm showing this because I don't want you to kill your son. In fact, here's an animal, and I will yireh. I will see. Every time a Jew or a Noahide brings a sacrifice in Yerushalayim, and God will see the ashes, and those ashes are in our stead. And by the way, the sacrifice is not for, as our friends out there teach, it's not to get rid of your sins. That's of course, we have a festival for that in the middle of the year. Actually, after the beginning of the year. Okay? So, and we know that the Korban is not for the forgiveness of sins, because when Cain and Hevel brought their sacrifice, neither one of those brothers had committed any sins yet. In fact, it was after that Cain had killed Hevel. It was after the bringing of the Korban. And have you ever read the Midrash on how these two brothers got into that fight? What's amazing about it is that the younger brother, Hevel, whose name meant vanity, it meant a vapor, because his life was going to be cut short, but also because he believed in things you couldn't see. He was like us. To the Western world, we believe in a vapor. We believe in something you can't see, touch, taste, or feel. And this was the measure of his belief. But when these two brothers were fighting in the field over some imagined grievances that Cain had, they began to fight. And if you read into the oral tradition, you'll find out that Hevel was winning the fight. And his brother begged for mercy, and when he did like the Jewish people have done for centuries, he showed him mercy. And of course, we know what happened. Cain turned on him. He rose up and he killed his brother. So as we flash forward through the centuries, we find twins being born again. And again, we see this wonderful thing that I don't know if I'm connecting in a wrong fashion, but I know when I read the story in Ezekiel of Ezekiel ascending into the Merkavah, the fiery chariot, and he saw the wheel within a wheel. I wonder if that's also, in one respect, a way of telling us that when you read the Torah, Hashem is saying, when you read my Torah, you'll see these returns and these cycles, and I will return you for lessons that you'll learn, that they're all connected. So we have twins born. And we have twins born who are much like Cain and Abel. One was very materialistic, Esau. He was an extremely materialistic guy, but he was also a very brave guy. He was a fighter. He was very physical. In fact, it's amazing because there's often things in the Torah that the Torah leaves out that tell you more about what you're supposed to know about that figure in the Torah. We only know that Yaakov was smooth. But according to Rabbi Hirsch, these two gentlemen were still twins. It's only that Esau was the more physical of the two. He was the more vital, if you will. He was this man of the field. And, of course, we know about the famous sale, which I deal with in the book. But I want to jump to after the sale, to years later, when Yitzhak, who cannot see, he's blind, and he wants to give the blessing to his firstborn son. And this is where we again see the echo of what happened in Gan Eden. Because as we know now, because Mom, Rivka, heard it straight from the master's mouth, from Hashem. God told her that the elder of these boys would serve the younger. So she knew who was supposed to get the blessing to carry on to become the priesthood at Har Sinai. And according to my research, after Yaakov puts on the skin of goats on his hands, and he puts on the garments that belong to his brother. Well, his brother had possession of them, but we don't know whether they actually belonged to him or not. And he comes into his father, who cannot see, and he receives the blessing for the older son, the son who was to receive the double portion. And I want to read from my book because I write much better than I speak. At least I hope so. And I couldn't put it much better because I've rewritten it several times anyway. There in the quiet warmth of Isaac's room in Beersheba, on the 15th day of Nisan, something monumental had just taken place. We know this because of a curious phrase by Isaac when he described a field blessed by God that he smelled. The consensus among Jewish commentators is that this is an allusion to Gan Eden, the Garden of Eden. So it is no mere coincidence that the words appear at this point in the biblical narrative. This remarkable reference is to, well, it's like a portal that sends us back in time. It sends us hurtling back to Gan Eden. This is what we're supposed to experience when we read this. To the first estate of humanity. The Torah is directing our attention to Adam and Eve, and there is a direct association between their fall and the blessing given to Yaakov. Both events share common elements, but with very different outcomes. Adam and Eve were told by God that they must not eat the fruit from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. The words of Nakash led Eve to doubt the words of the Creator. She took the forbidden fruit and convinced Adam to do the same. Their eyes were open. They were expelled from the garden. But to protect them, the Creator fashioned garments of skin. God told Eve she would experience pain in childbirth. Wait a minute. The Torah tells us about somebody else experiencing pain. Rebecca, the mother of these two twins. So they are linked. Marvelously, things changed in Rebekah's day. Instead of being deceived, Rebekah deceived her husband. She opened his eyes to see his error. She accomplished this with a masquerade utilizing garments of skin. Do you see the connection? Isn't it amazing? The effect of this holy charade was that the plan of God took a quantum leap forward for mankind. While Eve doubted the Creator, Rebekah held his words in her heart, determined the spiritual mantle would pass to the worthy son. Jacob, too, is recognized for joining his mother in rectifying the sin of Adam and Eve. And I'm going to quote Rabbi Nassim Slifkin, who says, he conquered the snake by means of deception, midah keneged midah. The snake used deception to bring curses upon the world. Yaakov Avinu used deception for the sake of heaven and was thereby able to regain the blessings. He was eventually given the title Israel. By accepting this noble calling, he restored the plan that started in Gan Eden, the plan for the priesthood serving the Creator here on earth. And of course, I deal with the bitterness of Esau after that. And I want to jump forward again to the famous next wrestling match in the Torah. What's the next one? He wrestles with the angel of Edom, the angel of Esau. And by the way, that was the original title of the article that I wrote that Carol asked me to expand into a book. I've got to get Carol to quit reading my stuff. Makes me work all the time. God bless her. Again, in one of the most celebrated wrestling bouts in history, Jacob is almost defeated by a man described by Rashi as the angel of Esau. There are countless meanings we can extract from this imagery, and they all apply and are equally important. But if we look at the name that Jacob gave the place where this wrestling match happened, we begin to understand the grand experience that Jacob went through and why he called it Penuel. He exclaimed, I have seen Elohim face to face, but my life was saved. Indeed, the name reflects a major revelation for Jacob. After surviving what was either a genuine tumble in the dirt with flesh and blood, or a turbulent and deeply personal dark night of the soul, Jacob finally understood that no matter what he encountered in life, no matter where he went, whether man or angel or good or evil, whatever the trial or experience, it was placed before him by the God of his forefathers. In describing the face of God, he was rejoicing in being part of the whole glorious, wonderful, fearful, rewarding span of history and his own place in it. Yes, that face he had seen, he recognized it was the whole reason for his existence and for the existence of his people that would be called Israel. Is the wrestling match still going on? Yes, it is. Because in these twins, when they looked on each other, they saw a resemblance. And so Esau has always resembled Jacob. His religion has been a darker image of his brother Jacob. And so we come now to the future. We come now to our time. We come now to modern Israel, which I in my book boldly call the Messiah nation. If we look at Exodus 4:21, there is a statement that has always struck me as astounding. God instructs Moses when he's at the burning bush. He says, you go tell Pharaoh that Israel is my son, my firstborn. Wow. Tell that to your Christian friends. Since the Jewish people are God's firstborn, it must then follow that we, non-Jews, are the younger brothers. And the Creator, by the way, when we look back at Gan Eden, this is not to say that our older brother is Cain. It's that God has always wanted the older brother, the one with the double portion of blessings, of knowledge, of wisdom, to do his part for his creation. In the beginning, the older brother Cain failed to be concerned for the welfare of Abel, and the result was a world plunged into chaos. We saw in Cain and in Esau, we saw how the elders squandered their gifts and failed the ultimate test because they rejected ultimately the responsibility of an older brother. The Creator has never ceased to inquire about the younger. He continues to ask the firstborn. We can literally thank God that Jacob responded to that eternal question. He redeemed the position of the firstborn. when he took on the role of Israel. And we can rest in the Creator's faith in the Jewish people, demonstrated by his bestowal of the Torah. It's the ultimate user's guide for humanity. The question to the elder brother today, and by the way, those Jewish brethren of ours and sisters of ours who are in this conference today have responded to that question. They are their brother's keeper. His faith in this holy nation guarantees that they will ultimately fulfill their destiny as their brother's keeper. Hazak. Thank you. Okay, we're not done. Not done. I'm gonna ask your indulgence, because as we know from our study of Torah, we know that ultimately one person can make a difference either in the world or in another person's life. We know that Judaism teaches us, the Torah teaches us that to lose a person is to lose a world. And I'm sort of paraphrasing. I hope you'll bear with me as I remember the one person in my life among many. One of them is in this, well, there's several in this room, in fact, when I think about it, but one, of course, is my wife, and other are my sweet, dear rabbi friends, and other no-hides in this room. You've all had an impact on me. But this gentleman here, who couldn't be here today. The first time I heard Vendyl Jones was in 1980. It was at a lecture about the end of the world. Vendyl wasn't the one giving the lecture, by the way. During this particular talk, I listened to a self-styled archaeologist from the Bible boast of his amazing discoveries while spouting an audacious mix of biblical prophecy, conspiracy theories, and archaeobabble. The gentleman was boldly claiming to have photographed Noah's Ark on Mount Ararat. I saw that photograph and I joined the group, and to my sadness, I was with them for 4 years, although it was part of God's plan because I learned an important lesson from this group. But I also learned that the photograph of the Ark on Mount Ararat turned out to be a rock about the size of a Volkswagen. Anyway, the man claimed to be looking for the Ark of the Covenant. So during the Q&A, because he mentioned the Ark of the Covenant, when the Q&A began, someone said, "Are you working with Vendyl Jones?" The man choked and coughed and sputtered a little bit. And he said, no. And he moved on to another question. That odd response fixed Vendyl's name in my mind. But I didn't actually meet Vendyl for another decade in Dallas, Texas. I'd arrived there as a newly minted bachelor, licking my wounds from a failed marriage, with an eye towards restarting my life as an actor. Surprise. My dreams were thwarted. I got into radio, where I thought my full-time job was going to be paid to talk the rest of my life. One day, a guest schedule for our mid-morning talk show canceled without warning. One thing led to another. I found out about Vendyl Jones. To my surprise, he lived in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. We booked him. He came on that morning. He was only scheduled for an hour. The audience reaction was so intense, we kept him for 2 hours. I would later realize this was typical for Vendyl. Looking back on that day, not because he liked to talk, by the way, because he did, but I loved to listen to him. I see now the listeners were responding to something that ran deeper than Vendyl's archaeological exploits. It was Torah, because Vendyl could not speak without lacing his conversation with Torah concepts. I knew that I wanted more. After wrapping the show, I invited Vendyl to stay longer. We went downstairs to the coffee shop. We talked for about 3 or 4 more hours. I mostly listened. Vendyl displayed the same gentle self-deprecation and folksy wit, whether speaking to one person, to me, or to a crowded lecture hall. I admired the fact that he was never afraid of any question. In fact, what I'm saying is Vendyl was real. 2 hours and several cups of coffee later, we parted with a warm handshake, and it may sound melodramatic, but from that day forward, my life changed. I began to go to his Torah classes after that. And then, because I lost my job at the radio station, I went to work for Vendyl. Driving Vendyl to his speaking engagements was the rarest of gifts. We motored all over Texas, Oklahoma, New Mexico, went out to LA. I was thrown together with Vendyl for hours on the road, It was a great opportunity. It allowed me to question him extensively about Torah, about the 7 laws, about the history of modern and ancient Israel and Judaism. It is a testament to Vendyl's love of these subjects that he never tired of my questions and he never lost his enthusiasm. I met Carol a few months later after going to work for Vendyl, and by the 3rd date, I'd asked her to come to Torah class with me. It was an acid test for my potential mates. Some responded with indifference after informing them that I was a Noahide. What is that, a cult, they said? In Carol, I found a wonderful combination of curiosity, intelligence, and spirituality. She took to the Torah with relish. It should have been a sign to me that she was going to be my mate for life, and Vendyl suggested, you know what, she might be your beshert, that soulmate that you're destined to eventually meet. 2 years later, this is after we've been around and we've been talking everywhere, and Vendyl put us together at the Cave of the Column on an archaeological dig. We stood under the flowered chuppah, overshadowed by the yawning dual cavern we call the Cave of the Column, and exchanged vows, surrounded by friends and family and 7 torches standing for the 7 laws of Noah. A few years later, I was able to stand at that same spot with Vendyl and Anita as Rai Avraham Sutton joined them in holy matrimony. Being with Vendyl on a dig in Israel, I genuinely saw, heard, and breathed and imbibed the land and its people. His own remarkable life marked him as a man who was touched by its history, both sacred and profane. The reader of any of his books or articles is acquainted with Vendyl's battlefield brush during the 6-Day War, how he survived a roadside machine gun ambush by rolling out of a truck into a ditch, of his color-blinded survey of the valley corridor that revealed sources of enemy gun emplacements. I'd never tired of hearing those dramatic events in countless lectures. And arriving at Ben Gurion for the first time in my life that early spring afternoon in 1994, I could barely take in the fact I was with Vendyl, with the people, and in the land for which he risked his life in 1967. Like so many before and after and since then, I felt I belonged there. I spent 3 months on that dig documenting our adventures with my video camera. It never felt routine. Every day was fresh and vivid, written across a deep blue sky that I've only seen in Israel. It is this deep sapphire that reminds us of the Creator's throne. The dig kept all the volunteers busy manning buckets or tugging at reluctant boulders, and from time to time I was called in to be traffic cop for the media that came up the mountain. I remember one particular incident. She was an Australian television reporter. She'd been animated and chatty, but she turned aloof and direct when confronted by this towering Texan with desert khaki and snakeskin suspenders. After 30 minutes, she wanted to take Vendyl home. Vendyl was a celebrity, especially in Israel. He couldn't walk down the street without being hailed by a passerby. We once consented to coming over for a television show produced by the Japanese. It was an early version of the reality shows, and the producer based in Tokyo phoned and asked if Vendyl would participate in a show featuring Japanese celebrities fulfilling their fantasies. It was a guy. He wanted to find the Ark of the Covenant, and he wanted the help of Indiana Jones. The producers agreed to pay all the expenses. I was convinced that Vendyl could be fun, it could be good for us. The celebrity turned out to be a Japanese rock and roll idol who dreamed of finding the Ark. And I'm not making this up. Vendyl and I stopped at the Cave of the Column. We're greeted by a small camera crew. The aforementioned rock star stumbled around the dig site in his hot leather pants, sweating. And as he chattered on and on in his gruff Oriental Japanese dialect, Vendyl said, "Yeah, that's right," as if he knew exactly what he was saying. Vendyl was the ultimate actor. Some of my memories of Vendyl are spending time with him in Yerushalayim. He had his favorite places to eat. He loved the El Gacho. He loved the Village Green. My guilty pleasure, of course, was a hefty shawarma. We shared a zeal for genuine local fare that could be found at the Yemenite Steppe on Yol Solomon. It almost became his office in Jerusalem for a while. These healthy plates were filled with good cheer, and he maintained, despite the continual onslaughts from anti-Semites, various Israeli bureaucracies, and a host of naysayers. They didn't faze Vendyl, spend any time with him, and you reveled in his lexicon of designated epithets for pompous academics and blowhard bureaucrats who he called lovingly Professor Picklesheimer and Dr. Smellfungus. Preparing for the 98 dig, after much badgering and cajoling and paper shuffling by Natan Moore, our resident warrior and Israeli dig coordinator, we got a permit in 1998. They'd made our lives difficult by designing and designating how we dig and where we place the debris. To rub Dead Sea salt in our wounds, they asked that we do this in the middle of the season. Vendyl was dragged into an Israeli court. And the IAA and their partners in crime, the Society for Preservation of Nature in Israel, sued Vendyl for allegedly digging without a consent the previous year. When the good lady magistrate presiding over the case discovered that both agencies had already issued permits that year, she threw the case out. Hilarity ensued. Vendyl was harassed on another occasion when someone called the police in Jericho claiming that Vendyl was digging illegally. This is by the way, the Parks Authority. On this trip to the Jericho police station, I accompanied Vendyl to the officers, who were extremely cordial, offered us coffee while they prepared the necessary paperwork. After a few minutes, they presented documents to Vendyl and told him to sign. He asked what he was signing. One of the policemen shrugged and mumbled something about not breaking the law. At that moment, I had to chuckle because I noticed a sign in Ivrit that clearly said no smoking, yet they were both smoking, the police officers. The policeman waved his cigarette and said, "You know, the law, the law." Vendyl winked at me and stated loudly, "I will only sign this under duress." Of course, he signed it under duress. Finally, this last story reminds us especially how the Jewish people regarded Vendyl. I, Baruch Hashem, was able to attend Vendyl's burial at the little Noahide Cemetery in Migdal, which was, of course, according to his wishes, just north of Tiberias. A few days prior to the funeral, Anita, who's here with us today, his devoted wife, asked me to talk to the rabbi who would be picking up Vendyl's remains at Ben Gurion and transport the remains to the gravesite for the interment. She wanted to make sure that everything was in order. I phoned the rabbi. He responded in a very matter-of-fact manner. He wasn't rude, simply sounded preoccupied. I phoned again the next day just to ask about more details. The rabbi responded to my query and then softened. "Mr. Long, I want to apologize. I didn't know who Mr. Jones was." "That's okay," I said. "You see," said the rabbi, "I decided to ask around and to search online and ask more people, and I am overwhelmed to discover who Vendyl Jones was and what he did for Israel. I must tell you, I am deeply honored to be doing this for you." In my years of knowing Vendyl, I saw camp followers come and go. Some deserted him because they believed he should have been faultless. The worst of them thought to enrich themselves by using his fame to realize their wild, greedy schemes. Those of us who stayed with Vendyl thought his last days were clearly that he was, he had faults, but we loved him for the vastness of his heart and for relentlessly pursuing the task that God had set before him. We realized long ago that even though the task was overwhelming, it did not diminish Vendyl. He was a true friend to me and to many others. He affected our lives in quietly profound ways. Vendyl may have been searching for archaeological riches. This says B'nai Noach, by the way. It's a cemetery at Migdal. He may have been searching for archaeological riches, but the enduring treasures he uncovered were the truths buried in the Holy Torah. He dug them out so that he could spread the wealth of the Torah, and that we literally would be enriched and further enrich the lives of countless people. And that was the real Vendyl Jones. Thank you. This is, can you read what's on his cover? Noahide leader and teacher of Torah to the nations of the world. Biblical archaeologist. Thank you.
Open my lips to sing your praise, my heart to feel the joy. Let me have the gift for which I'm yearning. Another night in Israel. Desert flowers blooming in the spring, the grapes upon the vine. Let me walk the beaches in the moonlight. Let me fall in love in Israel.